Okay, it's now live. Welcome to the node.js working group, security working group. We have a few items in the agenda. The first one I think is bad, but we can go directly to the issue 802, automatic check for dependency vulnerability in Node.js. I have a few questions there. But first, Facundo, what is the state of this project?
Yep. So no changes in the script from last week. So it's working, and it's from last time. Sorry, give me a second. So from last time the change was that the reports or the issues that are open on GitHub are not duplicated anymore. So if the script detects the same vulnerability twice, it won't open two issues, only one. And let me see, do you have on hand the link to the repo where the dependencies are where the vulnerabilities are created?
Yes, I will send right here.
Yeah, okay. So if you go onto the issues there, you can see that they are all unique, except for, so they're all unique for a certain branch of Node. So there is the same vulnerability twice, for example, the one that ends in 434, but one is for the main branch and the other one is for the 18.x branch.
I just okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, so a nice thing that I noticed last week was that there is a new vulnerability on, was it zlib, I think? Yeah, on zlib.
Yes.
And someone reported it on the security working group at GitHub. And it was actually the script had already detected it by the time someone reported it. So there was already an existing GitHub issue for that vulnerability. So that means that it's working and we can use it. But yeah, no further updates.
Just one thing is that basically when I go to the issues, for instance, the last issue, the issue 53, the name is new vulnerability on CVE 2022 35 948, but the description, the full output shows all other CVE.
Yeah, so if you check on the top, you can see first there's a link to the GitHub Actions run, and then there's the actual ID. And then we just display the full output of the script, which is if the script detects more than one vulnerability, we show all of them. But then the issue is one per vulnerability. We could, in theory, how do you call this, parse or filter the full output so that we only show the vulnerability itself. But yeah, it's something we can for sure do, but I'm not sure if it's really useful, because sometimes it is useful to have, let's say, if more than one vulnerability is available, it's good to know which ones are they at a glance. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, I'm just confused because I mean, okay, I can read to the top, but when I search in the, for instance, in the Google, I search for a CV, an exact CV, but I might find it in a different CV also because of the output, because it's indexed based in the body, right? So, I mean,
you're
it's
right.
not too much, but it's very confusing to me.
I think it's a good point. I think we can definitely fix it. Can you make a note that so that I remember, and we can just parse the output and just print whatever is relevant to this?
Yeah, okay, let me add to the to the personal minutes here because then you can create the issue later. So filter the output to the exact CVE to avoid misindex heat. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Another thing is that okay, that's pretty great, but I don't see other person can I mean other teams than me and Michael looking to that repository, you know, like I mean that issue was created and it was flagged as does not affect node.js. So and also there I don't see the difference between the v18 and the main.
Yeah, okay, so first, in theory, when we decide that the vulnerability does not affect node or it's already fixed, we can close the issue, so that can already disappear from the list, and then it won't be confusing. So that's for the first point. And then for the second point, right now, I think the idea is to, in the future, have one script run for each long-term release branch. And yeah, I'm not sure if it makes sense to have one for main and one for the 18 branch when we're still in the release 18. But yeah, we can ask Michael also because he was the one that created this this separated run, and we can see what if it really makes sense to have it.
Yeah, okay. Just one thing, just to make my statement slightly stronger, is that take a look in this issue. Matthew commented there that this is not a vulnerability in the Unity issue, but actually the vulnerability is the zlib in that one. And then Michael added it as does not affect Node.js, you know.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. This is a good a good case where it failed that full output thing.
Yeah. And
I'll leave a comment on this one to clarify.
yeah, do you have permission? Can you give permissions to me in that project? I can't neither remove labels like this one.
Let me see. I also cannot add labels, so I definitely
Okay,
cannot give
I
you
will ask
permission.
Mario after.
Yeah, and I also add put the issue on the meeting notes so that we know exactly which one was where we failed.
Yeah.
Or at least we need to revisit if it applies or not.
Let me just copy this example to add to the minutes because okay. Great. So maybe this issue specifically should stay for one more week, for one more meeting to the agenda, and then we can remove it and consider it a closed, right? Or we need to do something else.
Well, so maybe for this one we can also wait for Michael because he one thing remaining was to run the script for like the other long-term branches. And there was also the question of what to do. You know that the script has a blacklist, right, of which vulnerabilities to ignore, so that it doesn't report vulnerabilities that don't apply. And that, after thinking about it, and also Michael had a good point that, for example, for the long-term branches, if you want to update that blacklist, you would have to backport the blacklist changes to those branches, which is not like a easy or quick thing to do.
It's a tough operation.
So I was thinking to change the way that the script works so that instead of having a blacklist in the repo, in the node repo itself, the script could take as a parameter a blacklist file, and then we have the blacklist file inside this repo, inside the vulnerability assessment repo for each branch, and then we pass it to the script while we run. So instead of saving the blacklist inside the node repo, we will save it here in the GitHub issues repo and just call it from use it from here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Great. So yeah, that's very good. We just need, I mean, I think that we need some kind of discussion around, like, when you find vulnerability in the zlib, for instance, you might have a hash map just telling, okay, vulnerability in this dependency, you can tag this thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that it will give more visibility in the issue itself, because I just noticed the lib vulnerability because someone reported. But these two actually reported this vulnerability some weeks before, or some days before, and we need to be fast on that action, right? So
yeah, true.
If you can to add like a hash map or something like that, just to that map the dependency to the team that should be tagged in each issue created, would be amazing.
But do we know that already? So for
Yeah,
example,
we
if we
know.
see, okay.
Yeah. So if you create the hash map and open a draft PR, everybody will comment each thing exactly. You should ping for each dependency, you know.
Okay, perfect. Let's make a note of that and do that.
Yeah, let me add it as well. Get permission, hash map, visibility. Great. So let me just. Okay, the next issue in the agenda is the threat model, but I would wait for Michael. He have some points here. So I will mention the permission model right now, the issue 791. So a lot of things happen, and one of them is that we need an agreement on the name permissions instead of using policy. We will use the deny flag dash deny dash fs as a flag, and that's okay. But since we are using a different namespace called permissions, someone raised a concern that it might overlap with the current policy mechanism, and to avoid bad UX or misunderstanding of those features, it's better to rename the current policy document that currently it's hosted in node.js /API /policy. He suggested to rename it to permissions, and inside this documentation we add two sections. The first one is the resource permissions, and the other is module permissions that will apply to policy. The resource will apply to the permission model, to the permission system actually. So I think that I need the micro input as well, but I think that's an acceptable, a reasonable approach, I guess. Reasonable, but the problem is that if we rename the documentation, the current policy document will be 404, and it is already indexed in many websites and many tutorials. We need to keep the current link on date.
Yeah.
So we need to do that. But beside that, I'm working to handle child process cases. So that's an important point that actually it's good to have your point of view. Basically, you have ways to spawn process in Node.js, right? And for instance, if you start your project with denying all the write file system output, you won't be able to write to any file. But if what if you spawn a new Node.js process inside of this Node.js process, and then you'll be able to do everything. So
Yeah.
the way that I'm handling it is that once you have the policy, any policy flag set, you won't be able to spawn any Node.js process unless you explicitly send a flag hello spawn, and then you need to validate the input and everything, but that won't be considered a Node.js vulnerability.
I see.
Does that
Because I
make
assume that there's no way to propagate the
mm,
the permissions to the child process.
I mean, there's a way, but I mean, yes, there's a way. We can do that, but I don't think that we need to do it right now, at least. Because let me see one thing here. Yeah, the propagation, I actually in the first iteration of this pull request, the propagation was not possible, at least for performance reasons. But I have refactored the entire code, and might make sense to do that as well, to propagate it as well. But I believe for the first iteration, that's fine to just deny, like you won't be able to spawn child process, and that's fine. And then in a second pull request, in a second iteration, I think the propagation might make sense. I mean, would be easier at least for a review and to get more opinion
Oh
on
yeah,
that.
no, no, yeah, for sure. And what do you think about? So you said that right now the plan is to have a flag that if you set it, you're allowed to spawn child processes instead, in spite of having other restrictions, right?
Yes.
So what would happen? Like, let's say in the future, we implement this where the permissions are passed down to the child process. What, how would that interact with this new flag that allows you
Yeah,
to spawn child process?
actually, this flag will still be needed because you can spawn a process, but you can also exec any command. For instance, if I want to bypass it, I can do child process dot exec, and then I use the Linux command. For instance, mv the file that I don't have permissions to write to
Yeah,
another file. So this flag will still be relevant,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I assume that then, yeah, like running an arbitrary process will allow you to go around any kind of lock, any kind of prohibition you make.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
propagation
then I
is an
think it,
important point, but it will not sup, supersede the allo
yeah, I
flag.
think indeed they are orthogonal. Then it doesn't. Okay, so yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to have that flagged. So, and by default, then you wouldn't allow child processes when you have any kind of
Yeah,
permission
yeah.
restriction.
Unless the user explicitly set the flag, but in the
Yes,
first iteration, that's it.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I just have a different pull request that make the request wrap weak. Basically, when you have a JavaScript object and you need to handle it in the C++ side. You have like a clue, object clue in the C++ side that will hold the reference between the JavaScript object and the C++. So, for instance, if the JavaScript object gets collected by V8, the C++ side should be collected as well. But
Okay.
it is good, but actually it don't let don't let us as a Node.js developers to throw exceptions after this object creation. So the problem is that when a permission is denied, I need to throw an exception that this is denied. So I had to do this pull request. Anna helped me a lot on this, and the pull request is ready. I'll send it here. Just 1 second. I just struggling with Flaky test, but I think the major point is done. Just sent here. And that's it from the permission model. I think that we are very close to get a consensus. I think the next 2 weeks will be critical for this feature, but I really believe that we are in a good track.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. The next one is okay. The next one is what security guidance would be most useful for Node.js developers. This issue is just in the agenda, but it was removed. I just removed it from the agenda because the best practices document will supersede it. So
yeah.
So basically, what we can do is go directly to the best practices document. Is that I mean, there is not much to discuss. The issue is the 819. But there's a single question regarding adding malicious code as an example. Honestly, I don't see a problem with that. I think that's just a good way to show to the users how they can be exploited, and they need to prevent that. But
Yeah,
I remember that we had a discussion some weeks ago, some meetings ago, and someone raised the hand telling that this is not good. But yeah, we might have different opinion on that. What is your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the type of example. I also remember vaguely that someone indeed raised the point that there are some ways to, I don't recall the specific example, but like there were not well-known ways where you could exploit vulnerabilities in Node that maybe were not really vulnerabilities, but they didn't want them to be publicized. But I would think, in this case, what would be the example about?
In this case, the example was, let me see here. Okay, is to ensure shared paths have no interference in the Node.js application. For instance, when you require a module and you don't have this module in your current node modules, it will search following the module resolution algorithm, and then it will go back, and might find it in a shared path, and it might be exploited by an attacker. But I mean, that's just the way the Node.js works.
So here the example would be to what? To actually put an example of that kind of import statement, and then like a file system structure where that would be a vulnerability, or
yeah. Yeah, actually, yes. For instance, let's say that you have the app folder, and inside the app folder, you have the index.js. And this index.js is requiring a module, and the developer forgot to do npm install. So there is no node modules on the root folder, right?
Mhm.
Then what happens is that Node.js will try to find Node modules in the root folder. If it doesn't exist, it goes back and goes until the home folder. And
Yeah.
then the home folder is usually shared. It might be shared. It really depends on the current working directory. For instance, if you run the application in the TMP directory, it will go
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
slash and is slash shared. And if someone has access to the machine and installing and create a Node modules folder inside the slash
Mm.
with the file, it will acquire the malicious file instead of the expected one.
Yeah. Yeah. In my opinion, we should include the examples, at least for that, because it's really an example of what the developer should not do, and in what case that would be bad. I don't think it's really gonna, uh, how do we call this? I don't think it's gonna have bad consequence for anyone really to have an example of that.
Yeah, I would say that this, I mean, it is not, it's hard to tell, to say that it's developer fault, because everybody forgets to do npm style, like this is, everybody does it every day. I do it every day. I think that the important statement here is that make sure to run your application in a safe file system.
Yeah, no, yeah, but if we're gonna say, okay, you should do this, we have to explain why. And if we explain why, having an example or not really doesn't make any difference because we are already giving away. Uh, I
Oh,
mean, to me,
yes.
it makes more sense for to have the document be more understandable and legible than to judge that like something like security by obscurity, where you just give random advice and you don't give the reasons. But again, that's my opinion, and maybe it doesn't make sense for every best practice. But at least for this one, I do think we should have an example.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So that's good. I will just I think Matthew joined it.
Okay, so I see here in the comment that Andrew mentioned if there's specific preference for the examples to include or not include working code. Um, and then it says someone commented against including malicious code in the documentation. So yeah, I think in this case, so in the shared paths case, since it's not really an example about malicious code, I think it's fine. It's more an example of like
Yeah.
an environment condition where a certain kind of workflow would allow someone to exploit the system. But yeah, if you indeed have like a working example of malicious code, then yeah, you should be. We should do a case-by-case analysis to see if we really should include that in the best practices document. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how you doing?
All
Hello.
good.
So we are just about to finish all the agenda, just remaining the threat model that we are going to discuss right now. Okay, we are
Sounds good.
just waiting for
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
So just a quick mention. Actually, there's one thing that I would like your input as well. The permission model. Someone, I think Geoffrey raised a concern that the permission system overlap with the policy mechanism, the current policy mechanism. And at user perspective, even the feature is quite different. At the user perspective, they might work similar, you know? So his suggestion was to rename the current policy documentation, that is node.js API policy.html, to permissions. And inside that permissions, we include two sections. The first one is resource based permissions, that is the permission system. And the second one is module based permissions, that is the policy mechanism. I mean, that sounds good to me. But the problem is that if we rename a file in the documentation, the old link, the old reference will not be 30, will not be redirected. It will be 404, not found.
Right. Well, couldn't we add in a new page that says this has now been renamed to blah and have the link to the new page?
Yeah, we can. I never found something like these in the documentation, but
yeah, we've never done that. But like that's the thing that comes to mind is way to. I mean, we can't not rename things because the doc, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And do you think that this rename makes sense? I mean, my first argument was like, okay, I need just to create a new file and add the permission system into this new file, and do not like create merge those documentation, because when I believe that if the permission system overlap with the policy in any way, like even in the documentation, it means that the policy, the permission system will be attached to the policy mechanism. And since policy mechanism is not stable yet, the permission system will never be stable until the policy is ready.
yeah, I don't think so. I don't know about the names because first of all, I'm not always the best naming person, but I haven't thought enough about it to be able to say, yeah, that name sounds good. What I've read a little bit of the discussion, and even there's some discussions around, well, we do get in a bit of a tough case when we're saying, well, like this doesn't let you trust the code, but this is actually trying to help address that concern a little bit, right? So I guess where I'm going is like some good documentation that says, here's the problem. And here's what here's how these APIs help you with that problem, right? And like we at this point, we can be clear about the limitation there that says like, while like ideally it would let you trust the code, we're not guaranteeing you that, but we still think it adds some value to give you some extra, like seatbelts don't guarantee that you're going to survive a crash, but we still think they're useful, right? So we could make that kind of argument and then explain, because I think they're right that they're both sort of addressing that common problem. And then if there was a good explanation that said, well, like, how do each of those address that common problem? Or like, one is the seatbelts, the next one is the airbag. Same problem, they do a different thing. And in fact, now in our cars, we have both of them. They still don't guarantee that you're going to survive a crash. But, we're at the point where we think that they're beneficial to have versus not, right? Like, and so that's just the sort of context, or my input from what I've seen so far in the discussion is like, it's a complicated kind of thing. They are related. And also because we're not saying, yeah, this is 100%, it complicates the explanation. So having that clear, like you have these, and so that's where it would make sense in my mind to have one section that says, here's a set of concerns, here's some APIs that address those, and then you can explain and position how the two of them help you with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a very good example. So yeah, indeed, I think that we can do it. I just concerned about renaming the file and losing all the reference from the tutorials and everything else.
So I wouldn't get stuck on renaming the file to start. I would like think about what you think that first intro should be, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then does that require renaming the existing stuff to fit nicely into that intro? And
Yeah, actually, the concern was like, I mean, before merging, before releasing the permission system, we need to adapt the documentation to it. And to adapt the documentation, we need to rename the policy section to something more broad, like permissions. And that's and then even I can't make the intro between the difference, because in the first iteration, the permission set system will not be ready, will not be in the documentation, right? So
But yeah,
I have
like
a
I'd
pull
argue
request.
we should try and get like that documentation part is almost more important than the code in some ways.
Yeah, just share the pull request. I think that we can you can look to this and raise your opinion on this, and then we can discuss further.
Sure.
So okay, we can go to directly to the threat model. That is, I think, quite important. So do you have the documentation, the docs? Just sent.
Yeah, I just opened the issue, which should have the doc, right? Do you want me to share it?
No, I just shared in the chat.
Okay, but I meant like, do you want to share it on the screen, or you want me to share it on the screen?
Oh, if you want, that's fine.
Okay, maybe that here, I'll do that just so that we're looking at the same thing, if I can find that. Right, okay.
Yeah, Andrew raised the question that, I mean, every time that you use the inspector protocol, trust in the remote end, and I don't have a strong opinion.
Right, so okay, so of inspect can, is that to be
I don't know if it's just me, but your voice is very
Yeah,
freezing.
you're breaking up.
Yeah, it's breaking. It might be you are sharing the screen. I don't know.
that seems strange. Like, is it still bad?
No, it's good now.
Okay, so maybe I had some
No,
network
no.
issue.
Yeah, actually, it's
Okay.
okay.
Right. Just clarify that, like, the connection used for the inspector. So I think that definitely makes sense. So I just accept.
Is there a chance? So I see that the first point says the remote end of network connections that are exposed by the use of the Node API.
Right.
I remember from the last meeting that one point was that this was maybe too general. Is there a chance that to specify which specific types of network connections you can create from the Node API, or are there too many to actually?
You mean for this number one, like in,
Sorry,
It's
Michael, you're
in
still.
again, Michael.
say that again?
No, it's still bad. Try to not share the screen. Someone was.
Is that any better?
It's better. Way better.
Yeah.
It might
Okay,
be
that's
CPU related thing.
Here, let me stop this. I'm gonna stop that. No, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
How about now?
Oh, good.
Okay, well, I think maybe I'll just try sharing again and see if that
Yeah.
makes any difference.
So. Okay.
So sorry, I didn't quite, Brickendo, you were talking about listing the types.
Yeah, so from what I see that this was split into, before it was only the remote end of network connections, and then Andrew made the point of the connections created by connected to the debugger remotely, and those we do trust. So, and that's like a specific case of a remote connection, right? Is there a chance we could
Right.
be more specific on the first item, on the things we do not trust?
Right. So I guess it would be. This includes, so what else would there be, right?
Yeah, so the HTTP server for sure.
Right.
Actually, the HTTP server, okay, yeah, we don't trust. But HTTP body, we trust.
Yeah, this refers to the remote end of that connection, not to the data that comes in.
Okay, yeah, great.
Or rather, yes. So since we do not trust the remote end, we also do not trust the data that comes in by default.
I think you can add
But-
HTTP3 as well.
Yeah, do we have an HTTP3?
Yeah, we are going to add ng HTTP3 pretty soon.
Okay, so let's just say,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
And maybe that's a decent way of, like, what other APIs are there? Do we have DNS APIs?
yes, we have the
So what are
DNS lookup. I
those?
mean,
Node.js API docs. So if I go to 18, I'm sorry, I'm going to pull this in so you can see too, and then DNS,
yeah,
right?
yes.
Right, because I think like that probably DNS.
You started breaking up again, Michael.
Yeah, try to close your camera or something like that. It seems we're related to CPU.
Yeah. Let me see what my
Yeah, it
CPU is
started
like.
when you opened the new tab.
Yeah.
Let me close some other browsers, see if that helps. Is it still bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me start the video. Stop share, because that'll pop this back. Stop video. Any better now?
Yeah.
Yes, I stopped.
Mhm.
That's still okay?
Yes.
Okay, except I'm now sharing the wrong one, but anyway. Okay.
So yeah, we have the DNS.
Yeah, but this is a DNS client, right? Or is it also?
Right,
It
but
also-
like the DNS client connects to a DNS server. And so I'd say we don't trust the DNS server, right? Because we've had a bunch of vulnerabilities, I think, that are like, hey, you connect to a DNS server and you can spoof them. And
Yes,
therefore,
indeed.
like, we don't necessarily trust that endpoint if we're doing something that we shouldn't have, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. But then for me, the wording in that where it says the remote end of network connections that are exposed by use of node, to me that sounds like it's a server. So we're exposing a connection to that clients can connect to. Does
Right,
maybe we can change that, or
right. How about created
yeah,
that
yeah, I think that is.
are that makes sense?
Yep, yeah, I think it makes
Yeah.
sense. Oh, there's a typo. It's like that are created.
Right. Right. And then are there any others that sort of pop out here like that?
We have the net directly, but not entirely sure if we need to mention that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but maybe this is.
Yeah, I would say like any kind of socket is not trusted by Node.js. So it will actually, yes.
Yeah, but to me, this is still too general, right? Because any data that comes through a socket, we're saying that we do not trust, but then depending on the specific API, we might or not validate the data.
Right.
And if we do not validate the data, it means that we trust it. So
Right. So I was trying to add to this line is something like it's the remote end of those network connections that are created to the use of the Node APIs when Node.js, it somehow like mediates the connection, or is a go between, or like we need to be doing something to the data.
yes.
When Node.js interprets,
I think this is too general. For me, we should have, instead of this item, one item for each of the APIs. And then we say for an HTTP server, we trust this data, but not this data. So we trust, I don't know, the headers, and we do not trust the body.
right? Okay.
That makes sense. HTTP headers. What else?
It's also like, the SSL security, and like that's if you use the SSL security.
Yeah, the handshake, right? The SSL handshake.
I still wonder if like this, I wonder if it's then.
Body are trusted.
Yeah, although like I'm still wondering if we can tie it down so that like we don't have to be that specific, like in
Yeah,
the high level description, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
I also agree on that because I mean the body is trusted, but I mean I don't think that any other runtime or platform make any kind of validation in the body because that's inefficient, right?
Yeah, but it should still be like maybe it is the case that nobody that everybody trusts it, but we still need to specify it. Because then if someone opens a report saying, oh, I found this vulnerability, and it's actually something that they put in the body that's causing the crash or something, then we need to have a place where we can point them to saying, oh, we actually trust the body.
If this helps all, like the data from the remote end of the network connections are created through the use of node.js APIs, and which is read processed by node.js itself.
Yes.
Right, like we're basically any data we've created a connection on your behalf, but we read and process the data. So like if we're handling the data, that's the key thing that says whether we trust it or not. If it's basically something we're just passing on to you, then whatever, right?
Yeah, we could change it, I think, so instead of the data from the remote end of the network connections, maybe we can just say the incoming data from network connections.
And maybe it just says, like, does it even say we can just say the data from network connections?
Yeah.
Like less words is often better. The data from network connections are created to use of the node.js APIs, and which is read, processed by node.js itself. And in that case, it can be like HTTP, headers, SSL certificates.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
No, wait. Let me see. Oh yeah, sorry, it makes sense. Yeah.
I think we can probably still find something that's even better than this read process validated, but that's kind of like the key.
Handled.
The what?
Handled is okay. It's too generic as well, right?
I think
Yeah, like it has to be something where we actually like read the data and do something with it. So like that's why like a socket. No, we connect to the socket, we just flow the data through. We're not doing anything. We don't rely on it. So that's like out of our scope in terms of something that we
actually rely on that, right?
We trust on
maybe we could say the data is processed before being passed along to the application by Node, right? So the main point is that Node does something with the data before giving it to the application, whereas for the other use cases, the data is just passed along.
To the application.
Right. I mean, it's still words are hard because like you could say anything is processing, right? Like we sucked it in, we transformed it, but like the intent is something that we actually.
Yeah, I would also add an item to the part of the trust part where we say the opposite, right? Data from connections which we just pass along to the application, that data we trust.
Oh, just to know, it's already
Okay, yeah, and we've got to close because there's another meeting right afterwards.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
would it make sense to maybe set up like I have a bit of trouble making this time, like maybe we could set up like a separate meeting to try and
Yeah, I
workshop
would
this
love to.
into the final form, because
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I think that we need a meeting just to talk about it. Like, it could be just three of us, uh, and then we'll be ready to share it to the TSC members and get more feedback on
Yeah.
that.
okay.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah,
So,
like invite everybody who's interested in coming, but you know,
Yeah.
if we get at least a number of us, then we can maybe Andrew's been pretty active too. So if we can find a time that he
Yeah.
could do that, that would be great.
Sure, I will comment on the issue, so
Okay.
we can align that. So thank you everybody for the meeting. It was awesome. I will provide the minutes right after. So that's it. See
Great.
you.
Talk to y'all later.
I will coordinate the issue and we see in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you
Bye.
both.